Welcome to the Boomer Briefing Podcast, where we help you solve a critical business issue in 20 minutes or less. I'm your host, Jim Boomer, CEO at Boomer Consulting. And with me today, I have Alex Schwab. Hi, Alex. Thank you for being on this episode of the podcast.
Hi, Jim. Thank you. I'm very excited.
Yeah, this is going to be great. So Alex is the Director of Client Advisory Services and Outsourced Human Resources at Brady Martz. And today we're going to be talking about really the process of developing a CAAS group, and that's CAAS with two A's. So Client Accounting and Advisory Services. So I'm excited about this discussion. So why don't we start, Alex, with maybe you could tell us about yourself and the amazing work that you and your team do at Brady Martz.
Yeah, absolutely. So I didn't come to public accounting right out of school. I am actually a third generation accountant, and I did not plan on being an accountant at all, basically until I got to college and went, oh, this isn't terrible. Or as terrible as I thought it was. And so when I got out of school, I went into industry initially and worked for a couple different businesses, primarily in the oil field, which is a huge industry here. And then started at Brady Martz in 2016 in our what was then called outsourcing. The thing that appealed to me most then is that the seed of the idea for what has grown into what we now call Strategic Business Solutions, or SBS, was really just being planted at the firm level then, and that was a big part of the initial conversation that I had when I interviewed. So that little idea was even something that was in the firm then. During my time since I started in our outsourcing department, and beyond just the transactional stuff, got the opportunity to start working with some of our tax clients who needed more frequent touch points on those and what we were calling cleanups, which I think is fairly self-explanatory, just needed more frequent touch points, and helps the client get a better understanding of what they were doing, and then helped our tax team by not having such a heavy lift at the end of the year. In addition to keeping those cleanups, I ended up kind of jumping around within our firm services, did audit for a little while, including compilations and reviews and preps, spent some time also with a tax load. So I primarily had small business clients that I was the relationship manager on and leading those, and then also larger engagements that I was helping with the cleanup and preparation for the return. And then in 2019, at the firm level, again, we got really serious about building out our accounting and advisory practice and what that looked like. I think that's when we started working with Boomer. And that was the first time that I attended Boomer. So when I started in 2016, in part of our outsourcing group, we had our first, what we then called outsourcing seminar, and that had 25 attendees that we were from across the firm in person meeting to have technical trainings, firm-wide process, change discussions, that kind of thing. And then this last year in 2023, we had 80. So we had a very large increase in our department over the last 4 years since we got really serious about expanding into the industry CAAS. We've built our practice segment, SBS, with the intention of being a partner for our clients. That really the intent is to meet them where they are and help them achieve their goals. None of our clients, in my experience, have ever gotten into home building or oil field service or rental property management or restauranting so that they could be an accountant. And so our intent is to really help them do the thing that they enjoy doing, with good information that they can trust, but not have that suck the joy out of the work that they're doing. So we have spent the last 4 years expanding our team training, our service offerings, and just fleshing out what those look like, figuring out what our tech stack looks like, and what's our internal administrative processes, right, as opposed to just the client-facing things. And we've been able to do all that while meeting firm revenue and margin goals within our service. And then, as I mentioned, just having a huge expansion on our team and including mergers. So that our most recent merger was this last fall. In October, we brought on 2 locations in South Dakota. So within our team, that brought on about 15 additional accounting, payroll, advisory team members, and they have been a huge boon for us with this growth as well. My current areas of focus are two-pronged, primarily. One is on the business development side, so the client-facing side or the prospect-facing side, whether it's for internal referrals or outside prospect opportunities. What does that sales conversation look like? And I just had a call on that this morning where I kind of said, well, I don't really want it to be a sales conversation, but it's more of an investigative and having a conversation with a client about their business for us to meet them where they are and figure out what it is that they're really looking for and how we can offer that. The other side, the other avenue that I am focusing on is our team onboarding and ongoing education and career path. So we've had massive expansion here just in this calendar year. We've had about a 12% growth in our team. So we are sitting at right around 90 employees in our SBS practice. And we just, across our locations, we're having a lot of variation in what that initial onboarding training piece look like across the industry. Technical continue education for the CAAS space is hard to find, so we wanted to firm that up a bit. And then we're also working on developing a longer term career path that people can look to as they're building their careers at Brady Martz and say, this is what the future looks like. This is how I get to the next level. This is what it takes to get that promotion, etc.
You've been busy the last 4 years, and
Yeah.
that's amazing growth, and congratulations. But I imagine you're like me, like your life is not just work. Like tell the audience a little bit about who's Alex. What do you do when you aren't hard at work for your clients for fun?
Sure. So outside of work, I have a husband. I like him.
That's
And
good.
we have we have 2 daughters. Our oldest is 4, and then we have a 1.5-year-old. So they help keep us busy between the two of them, and we spend a lot of time with them. We live a little bit outside. I mean, we're in a rural community, but we live a little bit outside of town and have about an acre and a half that we are um, working to just get a little bit of a farm. I have a handful of chickens that we have there. We have 3 hunting dogs. My husband's an avid hunter, so we do a lot of, he's an upland game hunter. I'm more of a large animal hunter, so he likes birds. I like deer and antelope, and I consider myself a runner, but we spend a lot of time outside, kayaking, snowshoeing, just being out in the yard, tinkering with stuff, and then I'm an avid reader. We have a lot of cold days, so I like to be inside with a good book. And both of us have a really strong connection to our community. My husband's born and raised in Dickinson, and I just like to be over involved. So I have I have a really strong connection with our local Rotary group. Um, I'm a past president of that group, and then I'm involved with our Chamber of Commerce on their professional development committee. And then I volunteer with Bio Girls, which is for um, it's a program for girls, preteen girls, to uh, develop a healthy relationship with their mind, body, and spirit.
Wow, I said you were busy on the professional side, and then you add that in on the personal side. That you and I know what you mean with the kids. They take up a lot of your time, so that's pretty impressive that you have the ability to get that involved. So that's great. Thank you for sharing. So our topic for today is really around developing a CAAS group. But you started to go here a little bit with the context of where you started and where you are today. A lot of what you talked about in the opening was more around number of people. But is there any more context you can provide on the progress you've made in just 4 years?
Yeah, so when I started well, in Brady Martz and even 4 years ago, as we got serious about this, our outsourcing services were very transactional, which I think a lot of firms were doing. You're handling sales tax filings and you're handling payroll preparation and the filings with those and the transaction entry, right, with the end game being a tax return. Our processes were also very siloed by location. When we started building this out, we were at 6 locations across 2 states, and every office, depending on when they had come in, had different technology that they were using, different processes that they were using, different documentation that they were using. So we just had a lot of variation in the quality and the functionality of those projects. Consistently across the firm, those services were undervalued, underpriced, the team members were undertrained, and it just was kind of a catch-all for what our more traditional established services didn't want to deal with. So when when we really started with this, the intent was to kind of help bridge that gap between our tax clients that needed a lot of work with the cleanups. Over this time, we now have 3 very strongly developed service lines, which focus on the payroll, accounting, and advisory. The HR piece, it's very outside our comfort zone, so it's not as fleshed out. Um, but our 3 primary service lines, we have strong frameworks or much stronger frameworks around the services that we provide in those areas. We have a preferred tech stack. We're still working on um, narrowing that down for some of those legacy systems that we've used and making sure that we get those in the right uh, softwares going forward. We have service specific trainings and we utilize firm-wide staffing and processes. So just generally speaking, our communication processes, team development and staffing is happening on a much more firm-wide basis across 9 locations now, and with almost twice as many people.
You've grown up. a
Yes.
lot of the process, and the topic here is about the process. So um, what was the process to get from where you were to here? Anything you'd elaborate on in terms of that journey?
Absolutely. So our initial development of these, we had a team of 5 of us that kind of laid out the initial roadmap in 2020 for what we envisioned for this. And we were really slingshotted by one large client opportunity. Um, it was fully encompassing. It was going to be 6-figure revenue for the firm for the year. And it was just one of those things where, we had very initially planned to start with smaller clients and work our way into it, but it was one of those things where, well, the opportunity is here. Are we gonna grab it or are we gonna let it pass us by? So we grabbed it and just jumped into that with both feet and kind of learned as we went along. At that same time, we were doing kind of a lot of internal business development and communication with our relationship managers of the vision. And so our internal referrals were just coming in fast and furious. We had massive revenue expansion and service expansion, but we didn't necessarily have strong processes built around that yet. So our onboarding and service process were still fairly inconsistent. Um, and that's kind of how it has been. We've been expanding our services, expanding revenue. We have been meeting our margin goals, but we have felt that inconsistency. And during our current goal year, um, the focus really with them, because we had a merge in there during this current goal year as well, was really taking a step back and putting a stronger framework around all of the process documentation, workflow stuff to make sure that we could continue to grow um, at the rate that we intend to. So that's really included a total revamp of the initial job codes that we had set up for these projects. Our org chart within our department has changed dramatically. Workflow management and capacity management is going to be changing dramatically, and even how we're handling our billing is having a huge shift from our initial vision, just because we didn't know what we didn't know 4 years ago, and there's been a lot of changes in all of those areas. So that has meant that across within our department we've been working, but it's also led to a lot of collaboration across the firm. So I'm meeting regularly with our firm-wide growth leader, our human resources team, our marketing team, our internal IT team, to make sure that as we flesh this out, we're not duplicating any efforts or going, wandering off down a path that is not following the firm-wide vision, and that we're um, just really being communicative and transparent about what it is that we're trying to accomplish with our team, and getting good feedback from people who are more experienced in those particular areas.
Great. That alignment is so important. My next question may be a little self-serving, but I know you've been a valuable member of our Boomer CAAS circle. Used to be called the Transformation Circle, but can you share a little bit about the experience in that community?
Yeah, so as I said, when we really got serious about building this out in the firm, is when we started working with Boomer. And I remember going to the first one, and just being totally overwhelmed. I mean, the sheer volume of things that goes into building a practice that frankly didn't have any framework around it within our firm at the time was just, it's just a lot, right? And I think everyone recognizes that. There's just a lot that goes into it. And every time we meet, I always like to look back at that first 90-day follow-up sheet just to see how far we've come. And that first one, I had like 12 things where I was like, in 90 days, we're going to have an engagement letter template, and we're going to have you know, our menu of services totally developed, and we're going to have our pricing set up, which is insanity to think that all of that would be able to be done in 90 days, especially when I had 10 or 12 things there. And so we are able now to check off some of those things, but it was more like these were actually 2 or 3 or 4 year goals and not 90-day goals. But it's nice to have that those notes and that framework to look back to. The group itself is fantastic. Your team at Boomer always does such a great job of bringing in outside speakers that are able to bring some fresh perspective to ideas, and then the people in the group themselves. Um, the great thing about CAS in general, and with the Boomer group in particular, is the transparency and collaboration that everyone has. I think we all recognize that this is a fast growth area, and there's so much work to be done out there, and so few of us that are offering it or doing it well, that we want to give everyone the best chance for success that we can. And it's just really nice to be able to have that collaboration. And then, I mean, on the other hand, too, like a group of people that you can commiserate with and be able and discuss the frustrations that you're facing too.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Yes. Being able to vent is important. You just don't want to just go to a group to vent. You need to come out with solutions. And as you said, it's fulfilling to watch the group collaborate and help each other. And when you give, you get a lot. So that's great. I'm just looking at time, and it's amazing how quickly time flies when you're having a great discussion. You guys have done so much. But before we close things out, any advice you have for those in the audience that are maybe just getting started, of one or two steps that they should take to just get in motion and start to build momentum?
I think there are a lot of resources out there now for people who are interested in exploring some of these. I think the first step is just to start. And if you have clients, let's say that you're performing, and I'm thinking from like a traditional firm standpoint, but if you have clients that you're performing the more traditional tax services for, let's say, and you want to start offering some more of these, it's the easiest thing to do is just have a really frank and open conversation with them and say, you know, this is something that we want to offer you. We think we could provide you a lot of value for these services. Would you mind working with us to help us build this out? And the clients that we have had those conversations with of, hey, we want to try this new thing with you, know that we're learning from this too. Please give us all of the feedback, and then being able to take that and not take it personally, and take it and turn it into steps for action and growth is really a great way to start. I mean, we did it a little bit backwards sometimes, it feels like, of getting out there and jumping in and being like, yep, we're going to do this work, and then we'll figure out the process later. But it did allow us to figure out what processes we needed to have based on the work that we were doing. And there's only so much you can do theoretically before you lose it.
It does start with having more conversations with your clients. They can guide you in this. You don't have to figure it all out on your own. So, Alex, this was great. Thank you so much for joining me today for today's episode. Listeners, if you enjoyed our topic, look out for new episodes every Tuesday morning. We like to rotate the topics and themes, but the common theme among all the episodes is that we believe they are critical to your firm's success and growth. And we do them in 20 minutes or less. So if you liked what you heard, please subscribe. And thank you so much for listening.